Hello everyone. So in today's video, we're going to look at how we can actually work backwards and figure out what is the equation of the parabola. So up to this point, we've always been given the equation, and our job was to figure out how we would create the graph. Here, I'm giving you the graph, and now we're going to figure out, well, can I come up with the equation for this graph? To do that, we're going to break down the information that we can get from the graph, sort of working backwards. It's that same sort of information that we would get from our equation, but now we're going to pull that information out of the graph and then put that information together to come up with our equation here. So if we look at our first example, first piece of information we're going to pull out from this graph is what is the vertex. So our vertex in this case from our origin is to the right 2 and down 1. So our vertex here then to -1. Our direction, okay, again, by now hopefully we're feeling comfortable with that. This is opening up. Our y pattern, remember that our y pattern is normally 1, 4, 9, and 16. So what I now want to do is take a look at, on this graph, what is the y pattern here. Remember, our y pattern is if I start at the vertex, if I go one spot over or one space over, how far up are we going? And in this case, we're going up 1. If I go back to the vertex and move over, okay, we see 2 spots over, we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and make sure as you're doing this that you are counting from the vertex over, not from your axis. So that one is up 4. If I go back to my vertex and I count 3 spaces over, we see here that we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The very end of the arrow going up 9. And that's the last point that we can get on the graph. So if we look at this pattern here, what we see is that there is no change to this. In other words, that multiplier, remember there's our equation, so this is our stretch piece, or what we're multiplying by. What we see is that the a value, that stretch piece, because nothing has changed, that stretch piece is just a 1. Remember that inside the brackets, okay, that's always our left and right. And the number on the end, that's always been our up and down. So normally we would pull this information out to be able to draw the parabola, and now we're working backwards. What we see here is that our stretch, well, nothing changed, it's opening up, so this is going to stay as 1. Inside our brackets is our left and right. In this case here, we see that we've gone to the right 2, or we can see on our graph that we've gone right 2. So remember to go to the right, that the sign is going to be -2 here. Okay, it's the opposite to what we would think. When we go to +2, our equation actually has a -2. And then lastly, we move down 1, and our value on the end is our up and down, and that this here then to move down 1 would be -1. Notice that we can also pull this information right out of our vertex. That's why we listed it. We list this as h and k when we write this in general, and we can see there is the h and there is our k. So if you wanted, you could also get this straight out of here as well, where we can say, okay, the 2 is what's going into the brackets, and that -1 is the number on the end. So that's the general idea. If we try this one more time here, okay, for our second example, again, there is our vertex. So we went to the right 3. We didn't go up or down. In this case, our parabola opens down. Our y pattern, this is the one that takes a little bit of work. I always like to think of it like this here. My y pattern would normally be 1, 4, 9, 16. Here we can see if I go over one space, we're going down 0.5. And this is where, if you've done some graphing up to now, you'll start to see that some of these patterns look familiar. Maybe this is already jumping out at you here, that we're going down. Sorry, I should make that negative 0.5. If I go 2 lines over, I'm going down 2. If I go 3 lines over, now I'm going down 4.5 spaces. If I do one more, if I go over 4 spaces, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces. Okay. So now as we work through this backwards, the idea is, well, what are we multiplying by to get this new pattern? What did we multiply the 1 by to get negative 0.5, the 4 to get negative 2, and so on and so on. And hopefully we see here that our a value we are actually multiplying by negative 0.5. If we now put all this together to write our equation, okay, we would have y equals negative 0.5. There's our stretch, our a value. Inside the brackets, okay, is our left or right value. Okay, our h, or the x-coordinate from our vertex, or we can also see from the graph, since we move to the right 3 spaces, okay, this will be minus 3. Remember, the sign is always opposite to the direction that you're moving when you're going left or right. So although we move to positive 3, this will be negative 3. And then our last piece is what we are moving up or down. So in this case, we're moving 0 in the up or down or the y direction. Okay, you can leave the 0 there if you want. In the end, we really don't need the 0, so we actually could rewrite this as negative 0.5 x minus 3 squared. And there's the equation for our parabola. So similar idea to what we did, except for working backwards. Instead of being given the equation and finding vertex direction y pattern and using that to create the graph, we're now starting with the graph and saying, okay, what is the vertex direction and y pattern? And we're using that information to come up with our equation. Try the homework, see how it goes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask some questions. Have a good day, everybody.